Welcome to our webinar, Strategies for Supporting Individuals Using Substances and Connecting to Care, a training for law enforcement and first responders serving Wasco County, Oregon. My name is Debbie Jones, and I'm the Certified Prevention Specialist for YouthThink, representing Wasco County in Oregon. Thank you so much for taking the time to view this webinar. Oregon has been an experiment for all eyes to see over the last several years. What we definitely know is that law enforcement and first responders play a critical role in substance use prevention, treatment, and recovery. Thanks to local law enforcement insight, this brief webinar focuses on how to be comfortable in the role of connecting and encouraging help and hope while also keeping the public safe. It's a daunting task as laws and ordinances change yearly. This proactive and evidence-based model presented in this webinar will provide you with the critical tools and skills to continue and enhance the great work you already do. As first responders, you bring a unique heart and vision as you go about your public safety responsibilities. You wouldn't be in this position if you didn't care about people. With that caring heart in mind, this webinar was designed to help you give just additional tools as you go about protecting and helping serve your communities. This webinar does not minimize the importance of holding people accountable for their decisions and behaviors. It is, however, developed to help you be even more effective in connecting with individuals and potentially being a direct link for more timely and productive help. Thank you for your time and being open-minded to this opportunity. To provide this training, we have two experts in the field of substance use and prevention. Ken Winters is a trained clinical psychologist and a senior scientist at the Oregon Research Institute, as well as a consultant to the Native Center on Behavioral Health at the University of Iowa. He has studied adolescent health behavior for over 35 years. Joined by Ken is Gianna Calabrese, who has her master's in public health and is a senior research associate with NORC at the University of Chicago. Gianna has over 6 years of experience working in substance use prevention and behavioral health. This training was produced by YouthThink, a community-based organization in the Dalles, Oregon, in partnership with NORC at the University of Chicago. This project was funded by Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, also known as SAMHSA. Gianna and Ken, thanks for sharing your expertise with us. Take it away.
Thank you, Debbie, and welcome everyone. I appreciate your interest in this resource. This training session provides you with strategies that address several objectives: preventing and reducing substance use in your community, having conversations and engaging with youth and adults who are using substances, connecting individuals to resources, support, and additional care, and learning where you can find additional resources for your own continuing education and learning. A note about terms. So when I say substance use, we are referring to alcohol, cannabis, opioids, and the other substances. Let's take a look at some of the common concerns we've been hearing from you. Measure 110 has been an experiment, and the state of Oregon is still experimenting. Law enforcement knows this better than anyone. Violations, crimes, overdoses. Oftentimes you see people at their most vulnerable, yet you play a critical role by virtue of helping people in a trauma-informed way and connecting them to the help they need. One of Measure 110's failures was that it did not adequately address substance use by youth. We need to be more proactive instead of waiting until a person is in deep with their addiction. Local law enforcement knew this and wanted youth-specific cards in Measure 110. To reemphasize an important point that we want to make sure is a theme throughout, you can play a key role in supporting individuals who are using substances by having conversations about their use and connecting them to care. There are many evidence-based techniques that have proven effectiveness with helping people identify, reduce, and prevent substance use. And we'll be profiling a major model called screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment. Many of you are already using techniques in the field, and you may not realize it. But with this training, we hope to strengthen what you already know so that you can have effective conversations with youth and adults in a way that capitalizes on what evidence-based techniques have taught us. Before we get into techniques, let's first look at some information on why interventions are important and can have a positive impact. When substance use begins during the teenage years, there's an elevated risk for developing substance use problems compared to a person waiting to start use later in life. When use becomes a habit and consequences occur, a person may meet an official diagnosis of a substance use disorder. For those whose pattern of use accelerates during their teen years, they're more likely to have that disorder later in life. 9 in 10 people who meet the criteria for substance use disorder begin using substances before age 18. It really shows the importance of focusing your work on young people. Take a moment and consider this question. In your current role, in what ways have you seen an association between individuals using substances and experiencing negative outcomes? Take a moment and think of this. Perhaps you identified several problems that are common among substance users, and a list of some of the common ones are on the left. These negative impacts include harmful effects on the brain, especially among teenagers, and also include elevated risk of mental health concerns, violence, unsafe sexual behaviors, and legal issues. Yet on the other side, when intervention and treatment occurs, individuals can get help and reduce their risk. And such efforts also promote assets and favorable outcomes, such as strengthening interpersonal relationships, reducing crime, and making neighborhoods safer. Now let's turn our attention to the approach of interest today. Screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment, or known as SBIRT, is a prevention and early intervention approach to substance use that reduces harms and promotes safety. It has 3 main components. First, there's screening. This is a process of identifying individuals at risk of negative consequences due to their use, including perhaps risk of having a substance use disorder. This includes a lot of features. We'll focus on one of them that's realistic for you in the field. The brief intervention component is many facets, but we're going to focus on how it can be a conversation that's intended to help a person either prevent, stop, or reduce their substance use. And then there's the final feature, referral to treatment and follow-up. This is where you help link the individual to some specialized treatment or other type of service. And when possible, where you can regularly check in to facilitate sustained access to that service for that person. We're going to spend a lot of time on the 2 main components, brief intervention and referral to treatment. So let's take a look at SBIRT with a big picture. We know that you encounter individuals that are using substances in many different circumstances. So when these encounters occur, you can be applying the SBIRT model by engaging the individual in a brief conversation about their substance use, identifying community resources and support, and connecting the individual to those resources and support. So next up, I'm going to describe in more detail the techniques of the SBIRT approach by walking you through each of 3 core steps. You may already be using these steps, and the following slides hopefully will confirm your current practices. So step 1 refers to the numerous situations in which individuals may be using substances and you've encountered them in your work. These could be roadside traffic stops, encountering youth at home when a parent or caregiver has called for your help, encounters in the community, which may include repeat offenders, and arresting adults at home. Step 2 is the biggest step. It involves you engaging individuals in conversations about substance use. What we're talking about here is using a brief motivational style conversation, or known as a brief intervention. This step seeks to engage the person about the value of and the ways to reduce and stop using. A brief intervention can range from a brief conversation to a more involved discussion. It can be a single interaction or several interactions. But it's likely you may only have 5 or 10 minutes or so. So learning the keys to a brief conversation is highly relevant to your work. We want you to keep a realistic perspective about the impact of this approach. Keep in mind all these barriers. Substance use may not be the individual's primary presenting problem. Yet still, focusing on that person's use can have indirect and positive impacts on these co-occurring problems. As with all behavior change efforts, not all individuals are going to benefit. You can imagine all the possible defenses and barriers that you may be faced. Some individuals will not be motivated or interested in talking about commitment or making changes. And then some individuals may need specialized treatment because their problems are quite complicated. But there are some simple steps to follow that we think can help strengthen your ability to have these brief kinds of conversations. So I'm going to walk you through several of them here with examples of what kind of things you can say. So to lead off, it's important to have the mindset that you are expressing concern and asking permission during that initial time you're connecting with the individual. For example, you might be saying things like, what I'm seeing is that you're having some problems, and I'm concerned that substance use may be contributing to them. Another example, would you be open to having a conversation about substance use? That's an important ask permission feature. Second step, this is where you provide feedback when a person has made some kind of response to you, or you've already engaged in a decent amount of conversation. Things like, would it be okay if I share some information with you about your substance use? Then you get a chance to weigh in with some of your concerns. When you're talking with young people, there's all kinds of harms you can bring up. For example, because your brain is still in development, it can be harmful to use substances at this time in your life. What do you think about this? This is an important step, enhancing motivation to change. This is where you're getting the person to now perhaps think about some of the advantages of pulling back on their use or even stopping. There's an exercise called a pros and cons activity that you can use. It goes like this. So what are some things you like about using substances? So you start out with the pros, and you get the person to talk about why they like to use. And then you follow with, so what are some things you don't like? What are some of the negatives? And you see if you can get the person to think of some of the opposite of the pros. To further process this information with the person, you can use this little exercise, and you ask the individual, on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being not ready at all and 10 being very ready, how ready are you to reduce or stop your use? So you get a number from the person. You can reflect on that, provide some feedback. Then you can also follow up with, so you gave that number, so why not a lower number, like a 1 or a 2? That's helpful because it can get the person to talk out loud with you about, well, there are some advantages, I guess, of using. I didn't give myself a really low score, and that can further increase the person's insight about some advantages of pulling back or stopping use. Then there's negotiating an action plan. This is getting the person to think specifically about what's next. What steps are you willing to take to make a change? Or you could say, what are some challenges to reaching your goals? How could you overcome the challenges? Who could support you? So you get the person to try to think of specifics and then think of what could get in the way and then how they could use help around them to overcome barriers. Offering resources is where you weigh in and you help the person connect to local resources and supports. Things like, I want to share some local resources that you can add to your contacts and call at any time if you are in need of additional support. And then you end with a thank you. Thank you for your willingness to have this conversation. So these 6 steps, all the way from expressing concern, which is getting yourself to engage the person in a respectful way, and then walking them through steps to hopefully where they can gain insight with their issues at hand and getting them to think about change, providing specifics, and negotiating with them about a plan, and then getting them to think about local resources and then thanking them for the time that you spent. So there were several steps there. One of them is pretty valuable. So here's a question to consider. Why do you think providing feedback is valuable when talking to an individual about substance use? What do you think about that question? So why is feedback so important? Well, it's a respectful way that can help that individual enhance their motivation to change. So feedback can plant the seeds of change for an individual. It's an easy skill, but it has a lot of leverage when you're trying to convince a person to make some changes. So to briefly summarize, these key elements of this step number 2, the brief intervention, you're using conversational skills and active listening. You're allowing the person to share what they are going through. You're expressing an understanding of the person's current situation, and you're helping the person come up with a plan for next steps. And the 3rd step, this involves assisting the individual to connect to additional services. So when we say connecting to additional services, we mean helping refer or link the individual to a local service. This can include a service to address behavior problems such as addiction and mental health, and also to social services. Now I'll turn back to Debbie to discuss some local services in your community.
As Ken mentioned, we've included some notable resources specific to Oregon. When working with adults, you can share a copy of this Hope card. It provides statements of optimism, and at the bottom of the card, specific resources that are within our local community, including Bridges to Change, One Community Health, and Lines for Life. This card is available in both English and Spanish, English on one side, Spanish on the other. We also have the Hope card for youth. This, again, goes back to with Measure 110. We did not have specific helps resources for young people. This offers supportive statements and a list of several community-based resources, including those that are listed here that will help with alcohol and other substances. Like the Hope card for adults, there are phone numbers to a variety of organizations provided at the bottom of the card. including the Yes House, Youth Empowerment Shelter, the Next Door, which is a drop-in center, Youth Line, Mid-Columbia Center for Living, YouthThink, and Wasco County Youth Services. Again, this card is also in Spanish and English. The third card is making sure we have information regarding 988. This is the number that is specific for mental health crisis nationwide. It provides free, confidential support 24/7 by phone, text, or chat. Consider 988 the 911 number for mental health issues. It's a service when behavioral and mental health issues have reached a crisis point and immediate advice and help is needed. Lines for Life is the home for 988 in Oregon. 988 is not just for suicide prevention. It is also if you're in a crisis regarding substance use, some of the issues that Ken has already spoken about. Ken and Gianna, back to you.
Well, thanks, Debbie. Now we're going to show a role play video that demonstrates how you can have conversations with youth in the community. This role play represents an ideal scenario where the police officer may have a longer amount of time to talk with the young person and where the young person is receptive to change. But overall, the purpose of this scenario really is to show a variety of techniques that we've covered in this training and how they may be implemented in your conversations with youth.
Parents of a high school adolescent called their local police department because they found drugs in their child's room and were worried about their recent behavior. They requested law enforcement to come to their house and, quote, scare their teen. A law enforcement officer arrives at the family's house and asks permission to talk to the adolescent. The adolescent agrees and they step outside to have a private conversation.
I received a call from your parents. What's your side of the story?
My parents were just too strict. It wasn't as big as a deal as they made it. They found some pot and a bowl under my bed. I've barely used it, and I really don't want to get in trouble.
So they found marijuana in a bowl under your bed. They got mad and everyone started yelling. Sounds like you don't think it's a big deal and that you shouldn't get in trouble for it. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. They just don't let me do my thing. I stay quiet, mind my own business. And I've never once smoked at my house.
Well, what did you say to your parents when they confronted you about this?
Well, I didn't think they would call you. So I told them I don't care about getting in trouble because nothing even matters anymore. School sucks now that I'm not on the basketball team this year. I got kicked off the team because I got caught vaping at school in the bathroom. And I'm just so sick of my parents being on me for every little thing I do lately. They flipped out on me the other night because I got home 30 minutes after their new curfew rule. And then they took my phone for 3 days because I said I smelled like alcohol and pot. I barely drank much at all. And then they just started yelling at me nonstop without letting me explain myself. Hanging out with my friends has been the only fun thing I care about doing lately, now that I'm not playing basketball. Having a few beers, smoking a little pot helps me feel more relaxed. And nothing makes me angrier than when they take my phone and I can't talk to my friends. It's unfair, it makes me more anxious and care even less about everything.
Sounds like things haven't been going great for you lately. You got kicked off the basketball team for vaping. You've been getting into trouble for coming home late and smelling like alcohol and marijuana. Plus, your parents found marijuana in your room. You don't think it's a big deal, but your parents do, and they're upset. Do you think that drinking, using marijuana, and vaping have anything to do with these problems?
I guess so.
Let's do this. Let's do a pros and cons list, okay? Pros. You like staying out late with your friends. You have fun hanging out together, especially since you're not on the basketball team. You also feel that having a couple beers and or smoking weed helps you feel relaxed. Cons. Your parents grounded you for missing curfew and for coming home late smelling like alcohol and marijuana. and for finding marijuana in your room. As a consequence, they take your phone, so you're not able to talk to your friends. That makes you feel even more anxious and down.
Yeah, it's just hard. This year's been horrible for me, and my parents don't seem to care.
Well, which of the pros of staying out late with your friends matters to you most?
Mostly getting to have fun with them. It takes my mind getting kicked off the team, and they help support me when I'm struggling.
Which of the cons is most significant to you?
Probably getting in trouble with my parents, because then they ground me and I can't use my phone or leave the house.
So, hanging out with your friends is important to you, especially since you got kicked off the team for vaping. Now you're having to deal with the consequences of your actions, and your parents grounding you, so you're not able to talk or be with your friends at all now. So what's next? What are you going to do about this situation?
I don't know.
Well, you have your pros and your cons. Just think about it.
I'm locked in with bad parents and they're way too intense. I'm just unlucky lately.
But what are some things that you like about your parents?
Well, they haven't always been like this. They used to come to my games and we would go out to eat after. Travel on the weekends, hang out. I don't know. They used to support me more, and now I feel like they don't care as much. And think I'm a failure for being kicked off the team. If I could redo things, I would. It was dumb to vape at school.
Sounds like things used to be pretty good when you were on the basketball team. Your mom and your dad would come to your games, and now that's gone. And you don't feel their support as much. I agree, it was dumb to vape at school, and good for you to realize that. It's hard to lose something that you really like doing.
Pretty much.
What are some things you can do to help your parents be there for you more now than they are?
I guess yell back at them less. And not have any marijuana in the house. And not come home smelling like anything. But it's also a two-way street. They don't always have to raise their voice at me. And can try and talk like normal human beings. All my friends' parents are so chill, and if they'd ask me how I was doing, I'd tell them I'm struggling. But they never seem to ask.
Okay. What I think I heard you say is you want more mutual respect between all of you when you're talking to one another. It also sounded like you realize that you'll get in trouble less if you're not coming home smelling like alcohol and hiding marijuana in your room. You also want your parents to be there for you more than they are now. Does that about cover it? But what about the curfew thing?
Maybe we can figure that out too.
What would be so bad if you came home at the agreed upon time of midnight?
I don't know. I guess I can talk to my parents and see if they'd be open to changing my curfew from 11 p.m. to midnight.
Well, these are great ideas. They really are. Let me see if I could sum this up. You feel like you could have a conversation with your parents to see if they would be willing to extend your curfew an hour later so that you could spend some more time with your friends. And at the same time, you'll not keep alcohol or substances in the house, and you'll not use them before coming home. Okay? Well, what do you think about talking to your parents about what you just came up with?
Fine. I can talk to them now. But it would be helpful if you came with me in case they fight me on the curfew thing.
Sounds good. I can listen into the conversation and help keep everyone on track. Before you talk to your parents, I want to make sure that you know that underage alcohol and marijuana use is very concerning. It's illegal for those under 21, and there's very good reasons for that related to your health. Do you mind if I share some information with you about substance use?
Okay, I suppose.
Because you're underage and your brain is still developing until you're around 25, I recommend that you do not continue to use alcohol, marijuana, or any other substances. In addition, substance use may reduce your anxiety in the short term, but may worsen your mental health in the long term. And it can have many other impacts related to your health, relationship with your family, school, sports, etc. I would also like to give you this hope card. In the future, if you find yourself using substances or struggling with substance use, you can call the number on this card. It's confidential and it's available 24/7. There are also resources on this card that you can call for mental health support, and they can help you with some of the other challenges you've been struggling with. What do you think?
Well, I didn't know substance use could affect my brain and make my anxiety worse. And I know I'm only 17, so I really don't want to get in trouble.
Let's try this. It can be useful to see how ready you are to make a change, okay? On a scale of 0 to 10, how ready would you say you are to decrease or stop substance use altogether?
I don't know, maybe a 5?
Well, why a 5 and not a lower number like a 1 or a 2?
I don't want to keep getting in trouble. It sucks, but I would be open to calling this number though. And I'm sick of feeling anxious. And maybe if I get help, it'll be easier to not smoke marijuana and drink as much as when I'm with my friends. And especially because I'm not sure I'll get help from my parents.
Well, it sounds like your health and your mental health are important to you. The resources on that card are available and can help. You'll find ways to help with anxiety instead of turning to alcohol and marijuana to cope with your stress. And it's great that you're open to calling these resources.
Yeah, I didn't know there was anyone I could call, so thanks.
No problem at all. Now let's go talk to your parents about what we came up with.
We hope that this scenario provided you with a good example of how you can talk with youth about their substance use. As mentioned, the role play interaction represents the ideal outcome with an adolescent who agrees to follow-up care. And we know this may not be the norm, but we hope you use this scenario as a guide for the type of language you can use when talking with adolescents and young adults. The language that was used by the law enforcement actor, it may seem uncomfortable to use and like it won't make a difference, but we really want to reinforce that this model does work. And many studies have found that using these motivational interviewing techniques provides the opportunity and encouragement for youth and adults to engage in positive behavior change. So we hope you'll use this scenario as a guide and practice having conversations that use the techniques that were mentioned, such as expressing concern to the individual and asking permission to talk with them, offering feedback, exploring the pros and cons of substance use, and exploring a person's readiness to make a change. You can try this out with friends, family, or your coworkers, and it may feel awkward at first, but with practice, you'll likely see a difference in the interaction and overall experience. So now that we've discussed how to have conversations with community members at risk of substance use and how to connect them to care, we'd like to share some additional resources to support your continuing education and learning. Here are some examples of resources and support at the national level. So the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, known as SAMHSA, they have a helpline which provides referrals to local treatment facilities, support groups, and community-based organizations. They also have a resource specific for substance use and mental health concerns, and they have a treatment locator resource. In addition, for youth who identify as LGBTQ+, the Trevor Project offers a variety of affirming resources and additional mental health support. Here are some links to additional resources from federal agencies like SAMHSA and the National Institutes of Health that provide education on youth and adult substance use and addiction. And here are some key references for the content that was provided in this training. Debbie, I'll turn it back to you now.
Thank you so much, Gianna and Kian. If you're interested in learning more about how to strengthen conversations around substance use and connect individuals to care, please feel free to contact me directly, Debbie Jones at debbiej@co.wasco.or.us. You can also contact me to receive a copy of today's slide deck and a list of the resources that were shared in the presentation. I also encourage you to want to learn more about substance use prevention and screening, brief intervention, and treatment, the SBIRT model, which Ken shared with us today. You can find that at the NORC SBIRT website. Also on this website, there are demonstration videos which show examples of how to have conversations with youth and young adults about substance use. YouthThink uses this website continually, and I encourage you to do the same. Thank you all so much for viewing this training and for your dedication to keeping communities in Oregon safe. We hope the knowledge you gained during this training will help strengthen your interactions and conversations with community members experiencing substance use related challenges and help you connect them to care and support. We know it's a big job and we so appreciate your time and service. Thank you.